booth. English booth, test 1 2 3 1 2 3. English booth, test 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Testing 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is update number 5. His Holiness has arrived. He has arrived at the main entrance where he has received wild, enthusiastic, rock star-like receptions. You have your work cut out for you inside here. Sawa sawa. Thank you. Hebu nisikie tena. No, not loud enough. Hebu nisikie tena. Hebu piga tena. Come on, let's hear it. That side of the room is high. How about this side of the room? Hebu, can I hear? Practice run, please. Come on. Practice. Haya, upande hii tena. Okay, everybody, just some of the VIP guests have arrived, so please welcome. Come on, Nairobi, you can do better than that. Let's hear it. Ladies and gentlemen, His Holiness has just finished planting a tree symbolically here at the United Nations. He will be joining us momentarily. And you promised to give him a rousing, warm Nairobi UN welcome. And as soon as I see him, I will let you know. I will definitely let you know. I suspect that you may see him before me. And if you do, give me a heads up. everybody, I just want to warn you that His Holiness will not be coming from there, but he'll be coming from the left. So, I urge you to keep your eyes on my left, your right. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? I think it may be in your best interest to sit down. His Holiness is continuing a portion of the program he wasn't able to continue when it started raining. So he is heading over to what we call here the North Building, the new office facilities, but it's actually a green building, where he is going to receive a briefing from Achim Steiner, the director of UNEP, as well as a short update on the challenges surrounding climate change. So I plead with you to relax and give the pontiff a few more minutes. I will be back. Thank you.
Of course, right here in the country, all eyes on the Pope, and as of now, everybody keen to hear what his message on climate change is. And the visit by Pope Francis to the UNEP headquarters here in Nairobi as part of his Kenyan tour will come only days before the beginning of the seminal climate conference in Paris. This is just, I believe, 3 days or 2 days away. Pope Francis there at the UNEP headquarters here in Nairobi, he has been quoted as saying the world is facing a grave environmental crisis. And his trip here in Kenya, and indeed his address to the UNEP here in Nairobi, is coming just days before a crucial UN summit aimed at curbing climate change. So there is the Pope there making his way. And Pope Francis has taken on a vocal note in the fight against climate change. And we have heard him since his visit to the country, which is yesterday, injecting a moral voice into a debate usually dominated by economic and political concerns. Once again, his remarks yesterday coming on the eve of the United Nations Climate Conference in Paris, which will gather more than 145 world leaders for a 12-day summit aimed at securing a climate rescue pact. Pope Francis has said that environmental concerns should be at the forefront of responsible economic development. And of course, once again, just
as you can see,
yesterday where he said
the pontiff is very close to here.
Culture of conservation,
everybody,
which does
please stand
honor
to receive His Holiness.
But then again, calling on
Pope Francis, the Bishop of Rome, escorted by the Director General of UNON, the two Executive Directors of UNON and of Habitat and UNEP. Please give a rousing, warm welcome to the Pope. Nairobi, we did not hear you welcoming the Pope. Tana, another one. I think we need one more to help the Pope ease his pressure. Can I hear one more welcome from Nairobi at the United Nations, please? After His Holiness sits, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Director General of the United Nations Office here in Nairobi, Saleh Wakzaudi.
My glasses are with her. Your Holiness, Pope Francis, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, dear United Nations colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Your Holiness, it is an honor to welcome you to the United Nations office at Nairobi during your first and historic trip to Africa. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon very much wanted to be here to welcome you to this United Nations headquarters. However, other pressing commitments, in fact, linked to the upcoming climate change summit, have prevented him from being here. He sends his regrets. 2015 will certainly be remembered as one of the rare times when concerted and extraordinary global efforts were made to contribute to the betterment of humanity. It holds the potential to be a real turning point in human history, given the confluence of events during the course of the year. 2 months ago, world leaders unanimously adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which opened an era of hope and expectations, and also an opportunity for a genuine partnership in our global village of one human family. All eyes are now on the Climate Change Summit in Paris early next week, where we hope world leaders will live up to expectations by reaching a meaningful agreement. During this pivotal year, 2015, the United Nations has celebrated its 70th anniversary. It has been an opportunity to take stock of our achievements, of which there are many. But most of all, this is the time when a lot is being done in order to make the United Nations more fit for purpose and even more relevant than ever. Your presence here today, 2 months after your historic address to the United Nations General Assembly in New York, where you set the tone even before world leaders started engaging on the post-2015 development agenda, is a testament to a vital mission you share with the United Nations, namely to build a better world for all on a more peaceful and healthier planet. Your visit is an inspiration to us all and carries special significance for the United Nations family. Indeed, this compound is not just the only United Nations headquarters in Africa and the entire global South. Nairobi also is the global headquarters of 2 very important United Nations programs that you just visited, UNEP and UN Habitat. In fact, the only 2 global UN programs based on the continent. With country, regional, and global offices, this compound is an important center for the delivery of the United Nations' vital assistance efforts in Kenya, in the region, and around the world. Over the past decades, many critical humanitarian operations and peace efforts supported by the United Nations have been carried out from this compound, aimed at assisting some of the most vulnerable people in the world, in South Sudan, in Somalia, and in the Great Lakes region, among other areas. The members of the United Nations community based at the headquarters in Africa have a special and indeed a unique opportunity to advance the goals and values of the organization because of our proximity to the most vulnerable people we are here to serve. Africa needs the United Nations more than any other continent. The United Nations has been the last refuge for the powerless, the hungry, and the needy. All activities of the UN are of particular relevance to Africa, a continent facing many challenges, from poverty, inequality, social injustice, and exclusion, to trans-border, trans-regional issues such as violent extremism, migration, and illegal trafficking. On behalf of all the United Nations staff members in Kenya, I wish to thank you for coming to speak to us today, and thank you for your passion, commitment, and leadership in promoting peace, dialogue, and a life of dignity for all. I thank you very much for your attention. I now have the pleasure of inviting my 2 colleagues, Dr. Joan Close, Executive Director of UN Habitat, and Mr. Achim Steiner, Executive Director of UNEP, to make a few remarks. And I'll start with Dr. Close. Dr. Close, please.
Santidad.
Your Holiness, allow me to speak to you in Spanish Since we are in the headquarters of the United Nations, a multilingual organization, it is a great pleasure and an honor to receive you here. I would like to be very brief because what we would like to do is to hear your address. As far as UN Habitat is concerned, we would like to say how grateful we are that you have proclaimed in your last encyclica this call to the improvement of the living conditions of the poorest, and you touched on some of the fundamental challenges of humanity in that. On this African continent, we have many and various challenges to deal with. One of them particularly is the disproportionate growth of megacities and the concentration within them of extreme situations. In that regard, we are sure that Your Holiness Pope Francis and the Holy See, represented here by the permanent member of the Holy Nuncio, will support and always have us in our struggle to improve the living conditions for the most vulnerable who live amongst us in our large cities. Thank you so much.
Your Holiness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all my colleagues at the United Nations Environment Programme, I join the Director General and the Executive Director in welcoming you to Nairobi. It is an honor for us to host you in the headquarters of the UN in Africa and the city of Nairobi, which we in UNEP have been proud to call our home for over 4 decades now. The place from which we lead the United Nations effort on the environment, an effort that your voice carries with a renewed sense of urgency that the world needs to hear and is hearing. As both a leader of faith and a leader in our global community, your voice reaches across many boundaries. You have spoken to the challenges of our time with compassion, clarity, and empathy. You have shown unwavering commitment to confronting injustice, intolerance, and inhumanity. And you have combined the force of science and knowledge with the spiritual values and moral orientation. Through Laudatio Si and more recently in your address at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, you shared a vision of a world where people and nature can live in harmony. That inspiration guides us in understanding our responsibility to each other and to our planet, which today provides for 7 billion people, but must soon support 9 billion people. Addressing the world just a few days, as you will in a moment, before the Paris Climate Conference, with the future of this planet literally hanging in the balance, you remind world leaders, business leaders, and individual citizens that we each have not only a responsibility, but as you emphasized again yesterday, an obligation to act on what our conscience tells us to be right. The United Nations has a unique role in focusing effort on climate change, in forging consensus to allow the world to act together. We are the first to acknowledge that at times it can be a painfully slow journey from recognizing the challenge to delivering solutions. Yet, however slow, the progress is steady, and as we have already seen with the reversal of the damage to the ozone layer, which began its journey in this very building and hall and campus here in Nairobi over 30 years ago. So, in the field of environment, yes, the United Nations does work, it does make a real difference, and it does improve the lives of millions of people. That is why what has resonated for me personally is your ability to frame our collective and personal obligation in terms that are full of hope. This is exactly the mindset we need. In this very pivotal year, your powerful notion of the globalization of indifference, the globalization of indifference, speaks to the heart of the practical and ethical challenges ahead, both to reach a climate change agreement in Paris, indeed, and to deliver it within a much broader and holistic spectrum of sustainable development that must leave no one behind. That approach has embedded climate change into the global consciousness, not just the science on harmful emissions and wasteful practices that contribute to them, but the well-being of a healthy planet that includes justice, equality, and solidarity with the most vulnerable in society, and the very people who are often the least responsible for the problem, but are the most affected by the consequences. At a time when world leaders face some of the toughest decisions in a generation, the agenda for sustainable development does demand hard choices between the narratives of conflict and competition that carry such seeds of destruction, or striving towards an inclusive society that looks beyond self-interest to create jobs and opportunities and most of all hope. This cannot just be about the narrow pursuit of economic growth, as you have so often said. It must be about the value and the future of humanity living in harmony with nature and with each other. Your Holiness, thank you for being with us today, and even on a rainy day, rain in Africa is a very beautiful thing. So take the quantity of rain. You know, there is a country called Botswana which even has named its currency as the pula, which is the rain. So it really is a gift, and I think you have gotten a great deal of it today. But let me thank you for being with us today and for speaking from the heart of Africa to the hearts of people across the world. Thank you.
I now have the great honor and privilege of inviting His Holiness Pope Francis to deliver his address. Your Holiness, please.
I would like to thank Madam Salework Zoda, Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi, for her kind invitation and words of welcome, as well as Mr. Achim Steiner, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme, and Mr. Joan Clos, Executive Director of UN Habitat. I would like to take this opportunity to greet all the staff members and all of those associated with the institutions who are here present. Even though they may not be here now, all of those who are involved in the daily work here. On my way to this hall, I was asked to plant a tree in the park of the United Nations compound. I was happy to carry out this simple symbolic act, which is so meaningful in so many cultures. Planting a tree is first and foremost an invitation to continue the battle against phenomena like deforestation and desertification. It reminds us of the importance of safeguarding and responsibly administering those richly biodiverse lungs of our planet, which include, on the African continent, the Congo basins, a place which is essential for the entire Earth and for the future of humanity. It also points to the need to appreciate and encourage the commitment of international agencies and civil society organizations which draw public attention to these very issues, and they offer critical cooperation, employing legitimate means of pressure to ensure that each government carries out its proper and inalienable responsibility to preserve its country's environment and natural resources, without capitulating to spurious local or international interests. Planting a tree is also an incentive to keep trusting, hoping, and, above all, acting to reverse all those situations of injustice and deterioration which we are currently suffering from. In a few days' time, an important meeting on climate change will begin in Paris, where the international community as such will once again confront these issues. It would be sad, and I dare say even catastrophic, were particular interests to prevail over the common good and lead to the manipulation of information in order to protect their own plans and projects. In this international context, we are confronted with a choice which cannot be ignored, either to improve or to destroy the environment. Every step we take, whether large or small, individual or collective, in caring for creation, opens a sure path for that generous and worthy creativity which brings out the best in human beings. The climate is a common good. It belongs to all and is meant for all. Climate change is a global problem with grave implications: environmental, social, economic, political, and in terms of the distribution of goods. It represents one of the principal challenges facing humanity today. Our response to this challenge needs to incorporate a social perspective, which takes into account the fundamental rights of the poor and the underprivileged. Because the misuse and destruction of the environment are also accompanied by a relentless process of exclusion.
La COP21
COP21 represents an important stage in the process of developing a new energy system, which depends on a minimal use of fossil fuels, aims at energy efficiency, and is based on the use of energy resources with little or no carbon content. And we have an example here. We are faced with a great political and economic obligation to rethink and correct the dysfunctions and distortions of the current model of development. The Paris Agreement can give a clear signal in this direction, provided that, as I already said before the UN General Assembly, we avoid every temptation to fall into a declarationist nominalism, which would just assuage our consciences. We need to ensure that our institutions are genuinely effective. For this reason, I express my hope that COP21 will achieve a global and transformative agreement based on the principles of solidarity, justice, equality, and participation. And an agreement which targets three complex and interdependent goals: reducing the impact of climate change, fighting poverty, and ensuring respect for human dignity.
A pesar de muchas...
For all the difficulties involved, there is a growing conviction that our planet is a homeland and that humanity is one people living in a common home. No country can act independently of a common responsibility. If we truly desire positive change, we have humbly to accept our interdependence. The problem arises whenever we think of interdependence as a synonym for domination or the subjection of some to the interests of others, of the powerless to the powerful. What we need is sincere and open dialogue with responsible cooperation on the part of all: political authorities, the scientific community, the business world, and civil society. There are many positive examples, and they demonstrate that genuine cooperation between politics, science, and business can achieve significant results. At the same time, we believe that human beings, while capable of the worst, are also capable of rising above themselves, choosing again what is good and making a new start. This deep conviction leads us to hope that whereas the post-industrial period may well be remembered as one of the most irresponsible in history, humanity at the dawn of the 21st century will be remembered for having generously shouldered its grave responsibilities. If this is to happen, the economy and politics need to be placed at the service of peoples, with the result that human beings, in harmony with nature, structure the entire system of production and distribution, so that the abilities and needs of each individual find suitable expression in social life. This isn't an idealistic utopia. On the contrary, this is a realistic prospect which makes the human person and human dignity the point of departure and the goal of everything. This much-needed change of course cannot take place, however, without a substantial commitment to education and training. Nothing will be possible unless political and technical solutions are accompanied by a process of education which proposes new ways of living, a new culture. This requires an educational process which fosters in boys and girls, women and men, young people and adults, the adoption of a culture of care. Care for oneself, care for others, care for the environment, instead of a culture of waste, a throwaway culture, where people use and discard themselves, others, and the environment. By promoting an awareness of our common origin, of our mutual belonging, and of the future to be shared with everyone, we will enable the development of new convictions, attitudes, and lifestyles. This is a great cultural, spiritual, and educational challenge. It will require that we set out on the long path of renewal, and we still have time to accomplish this. Many are the faces, the stories, and the evident effects on the lives of thousands of people whom the culture of deterioration and waste has allowed to be sacrificed before the idols of profit and consumption. We need to be alert to one sad sign of the globalization of indifference: the fact that we are gradually growing accustomed to the suffering of others, as if it were normal. Or even worse, becoming resigned to such extreme and scandalous kinds of using and discarding and social exclusion, such as new forms of slavery, trafficking in human persons, forced labor, prostitution, and trafficking in organs. There has been a tragic rise in the number of migrants seeking to flee from the growing poverty exacerbated by environmental degradation. They are not recognized by international conventions as refugees. They bear the loss of the lives they have left behind without enjoying any legal protection whatsoever.
Son muchas vidas.
Many lives, many stories, many dreams have been shattered today. We cannot remain indifferent to this. We have no right to do so.
Together with the neglect of the environment, we have witnessed for some time now a rapid process of urbanization, which, unfortunately, in many cases has led to a disproportionate and unplanned growth of many cities, which have become unhealthy to live in and inefficient. There, we increasingly see the troubling symptoms of social breakdown, which is spawning increased violence and giving rise to new forms of social aggression. Of drug trafficking and growing drug use by young people, along with a loss of identity, a lack of rootedness, and social anonymity. Here, I would like to offer a word of encouragement to all those working at the local and international levels to ensure that the process of urbanization becomes an effective means for development and integration. This means working to guarantee for everyone, especially those living in outlying neighborhoods, the basic rights to dignified living conditions and to land, lodging, and labor. There is a need to promote urban planning and maintenance of public areas which move in this direction of dignified living conditions and take into consideration the views of local residents. And this will help to eliminate the many instances of inequality and pockets of urban poverty, because these not only have an economic dimension, but also environmental and social dimensions. The forthcoming Habitat 3 conference planned for Quito in October 2016 could be a significant opportunity for identifying ways of responding to these issues. In a few weeks, Nairobi will host the 10th Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization. In 1967, my predecessor, Pope Paul VI, as he contemplated an increasingly interdependent world and foreseeing the current reality of globalization, Pope Paul VI reflected on how commercial relationships between states could prove a fundamental element for the development of peoples, or, on the other hand, could be a cause of extreme poverty and exclusion. While recognizing that much has been done in this area, it seems that we have yet to attain an international system of trade which is equitable and works at the service of the struggle against poverty and exclusion. Commercial relationships between states, as an indispensable part of relations between peoples, can do as much to harm the environment as to restore it and preserve it for future generations. It is my hope that the deliberations of the forthcoming Nairobi conference will not prove to be a simple balancing of conflicting interests, but a genuine service to care for our common home and the holistic development of people, especially those in greatest need. I would particularly like to echo the concern of all those groups engaged in projects for the development and health care, including those religious congregations which serve the poor and the most excluded, projects with regard to agreements on intellectual property and access to medicine and essential health care. Regional free trade treaties dealing with the protection of intellectual property, particularly in the areas of pharmaceutics and biotechnology, should not only maintain intact the powers already granted to states by multilateral agreements, but should also be a means for ensuring a minimum of health care and access to basic treatment for all. Multilateral discussions, for their part, should allow poorer countries the time, the flexibility, and the exemptions needed for them to comply with trade regulations in an orderly and relatively smooth manner. Interdependence and the integration of economies should not be at all detrimental to existing systems of healthcare and social security, but rather should promote the creation and smooth functioning of such systems. Certain health issues like the eradication of malaria and tuberculosis, treatment of the so-called orphan diseases, and neglected sectors of tropical medicine require urgent political attention above and beyond all other commercial or political interests. Africa offers the world a bounty and natural wealth which inspire praise for the Creator. This natural beauty, which belongs to Africa and to all mankind, is constantly exposed to the risk of destruction caused by human selfishness of every kind and by the exploitation of the poor and the excluded. In the context of economic relationships between states and between peoples, we cannot be silent about forms of illegal trafficking which arise in situations of poverty and which in turn lead to greater poverty and exclusion. The illegal trade in diamonds and precious stones, rare metals, and trade in products of great strategic value such as wood, biological material, and animal products, as well as ivory trafficking, and the consequent killing of elephants, fuel political instability, organized crime, and terrorism. A cry is rising up from humanity and from the very bowels of the earth itself, a cry which needs to be heard by the international community. In my recent visit to the United Nations headquarters in New York, I expressed the desire and hope that the work of the United Nations and its multilateral activities may be the pledge of a secure and happy future for generations to come. And so it will be, if the representatives of the states can set aside partisan and ideological interests and sincerely strive to serve the common good. Once again, I would like to express to you the support of the Catholic community, and of course my own, to continue to pray and work to ensure that the fruits of regional cooperation expressed today by the African Union and in the many African agreements on trade, cooperation and development may be vigorously pursued and always take into account the common good of the sons and daughters of this continent. May the blessing of Almighty God be with each of you and with your peoples. Thank you.
Papa, take a bow. Wave again. Wave again. Please take your seats. Please take your seats. Please take your seats. Please take your seats. Please allow the pontiff to receive another warm thank you for making his way here today and speaking. And speaking so forcefully and eloquently on issues that matter to humanity on an every single day basis. Thank you very much, Your Pontiff. We are very, very grateful. I would like now to inform you that besides you staying in your place, to allow His Holiness and the Director General to come behind me, and His Holiness will present to our Director General a gift for the United Nations, which will be received by Ambassador Saleh Wak-Zewde. I urge you to stay in your places and allow the Pontiff and the Director General to come forward. Please stay where you are.
Che ci sono i primi.
Sì,
UNEP. Papa Francis kwenye hotuba yake ameelezea masuala kadha wa kadha yote yanayohusiana na uhifadhi wa mazingira na kuelezea kuwa jukumu la kuhifadhi mazingira ni jukumu la kila mmoja wetu. Papa Francis amerejelea mno vile vile mkutano wa kimataifa ambao unatarajiwa kuanza siku 4 zijazo kule Paris, Ufaransa, kuhusiana na mabadiliko ya hali ya anga. Mkutano huo ni muhimu mno na Papa Francis amerejelea umuhimu wa mkutano huo akielezea kuwa